Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
All right, we're heading into I say unusually hot weekend. I mean, it's June. We should expect late June, so we should expect heat, right? However, the kind of heat that we're experiencing is near historic and happening in places that it shouldn't normally happen. And I'm glad to talk about nature giving us the evidence that we are in arrears. We're past due on dealing with climate change. There was a case in Hawaii that got my attention, and I'll discuss that in a little bit. That's just something for down the road. I'm just kind of wetting the whistle and teasing you a little bit. I really want to talk about Nathan Wade. What is Nathan Wade doing? Why is Nathan Wade showing up on TV channels all across the dial? CNN, Comedy Central. Why is Nathan Wade showing up doing comedy clips on Comedy Central? Listen to this.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to Chopping It Up with Quan.
This is actually comedian and actor Marlon Wayans playing a character named Quan.
Here today, I got my man Nathan Wade, looking smooth. Yeah. What was your first thought when you had the affair with Fonnie come public between you and her?
Why is he on The Daily Show doing this bit with this comedian?
Don't label it an affair.
Wifey or?
D.A. Willis is a respectable mother, a brilliant legal mind.
Right.
We spent countless hours preparing this case, investigating this.
I see how it happened, countless hours, and I need a foot rub, and you know what I mean? She rub your foot, and you like, here, let me give you a massage, and all of a sudden, pump, we up on this desk. Man.
No. Not even close. Great question.
She liked it at you, or you liked it at her?
Well, that's a great question, right? So during the course of the investigation, we would meet early mornings, weekends, spend full days.
How can you not hit that? How can you not?
Yes, Nathan Wade sees himself in a position to make light of all that his, whatever you want to call it, he doesn't want to call it an affair, his relationship, his time spent, quality time spent with Fonnie Willis. And he thinks with all that's gone down, the delay of the trial, the fact that the American people really would have liked the resolution to this trial before voting and now won't get that opportunity. And for that, Nathan Wade says, yeah, sure, I'll take a little bit of money. Let's go do The Daily Show.
Well, in terms of workplace romances, how many places have you worked?
I probably worked like 3 or 4 places, and everywhere I went, it was a mess.
Well, you know.
So she your boss?
So
you on that indecent proposal shit?
No.
You on that Demi? What's that white girl name that married to the dude from Die Hard?
So that's a common misconception,
Disclosure.
Right?
You on that disclosure shit?
No. That's a common misconception. She's not my boss. She's never been my boss.
You wasn't he too'd.
Right.
Right, she ain't he to you.
No, I was a contract attorney. She was more analogous to a client to me.
So you saying she was a client?
Yes.
Right, so you served her well.
My God.
And let's talk about some of the successes I did while I was
I think we talking
on the
about
job.
the successes.
No, we didn't. We're talking about securing an indictment, talking about getting people to enter pleas.
Right, enter pleas.
Oh, God.
Enter pleas. We gotta enter pleas.
We're talking about other jurisdictions even following suit.
So we'll get to where Nathan Wade was also on CNN with Caitlin Collins, by the way, and his advisors stopped the interview so that he could confer with them to provide a better answer, litigiously speaking. And in this case, it seems like this was recorded with no delay whatsoever. Just keep answering silly questions and being silly.
So let me ask you, when old girl was like, hey, babe, you want to be in charge of this prosecution of the President of the United States who did this insurrection? Did you think, like, this could get messy? Or you was like, nah, I'll be all right.
We did not have that type of relationship
Right.
at the outset, and we were interviewing other people for the position.
What position was it?
It was only
God.
special prosecutor.
Did that position look like this?
Oh, my God.
Or did that position look like this?
Oh, my God.
So no.
Marlon Wayans, by the way, sitting in various positions on the couch that could be deemed as sexual position. And that's not when it occurred to Nathan Wade, okay, what have I gotten myself into? Let me get out of this and make sure this doesn't go to air. Nope, didn't cross his mind. Which, now that I think about it, actually tracks because it's his judgment that we're questioning here, right?
After Wade resigned as special prosecutor, Trump's law dogs still tried to use their relationship to get the case thrown out. They compelled his ass to testify and grilled this hard.
Did you go to a cabin with Miss Willis ever?
But the homie had answers.
Ever?
Ever.
Oh my God.
No.
You remember booking a cabin?
I booked lots of cabins.
My question is, when you booking all these cabins?
So
How many district attorneys you be smashing in cabins?
Oh my God.
Is it Airbnb or Verbo? Where you be getting all these cabins from? That's what my people want to know.
where do I get them?
All right, so some people saying this ordeal might have ruined the best chance to hold Trump accountable for trying to end democracy.
Fair question.
Now, what would you say to all the haters out there who can't get laid?
Oh, no.
I don't know what the haters are thinking, but what I will say is under my leadership, we successfully secured a valid legal indictment, the charging document.
All right, young black men need a role model. What's your advice to kids in the hood that's out there that want to grow up and have their day potentially end democracy?
God.
That's some lethal shit, you ask me.
We're talking about.
Why is he doing this interview?
I don't know that I have advice for any young black men to have workplace romances. What I do have advice for young black men is simply this. You can do whatever you put your mind to. I am a black father, was a black husband. I took care of my family. I took care of my children. My children are young adults now. Black fathers are positive. I take pride in being a black man.
That's a t-shirt. I'm gonna put that shit on a t-shirt, sell it on the corner in Harlem. You know what money you make?
This is the man who was in charge of leading the prosecution of the former president of the United States in election interference. And he didn't have the sense to realize he was being made fun of on Comedy Central.
You seem like a free-spirited man, you know what I'm saying? How many Diddy parties you went to?
God.
Nah, none. How many did you go to?
I went to several, but I left early. This ain't about me. I want to thank you for sitting down with me and answering the real questions for me and my people, all the hundreds or possibly billions of Quam fans out there. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you, my man, for real. He hit it. He hit it. He did it.
Why is Nathan Wade? And listen, in that interview, I mean, I don't know how it was pre-taped. I'm sure there were some sort of delays or stoppages. But seriously, you're questioning his judgment because he didn't get up and leave that or apparently have the sway or read the contract maybe. You're a lawyer to understand that you can veto that ever going to air or seeing the light of day, apparently. I mean, if I were an attorney, if I were as smart as Nathan Wade was and, you know, had law degrees and work as a special prosecutor, I would make sure before I go do something like The Daily Show that I had an ironclad agreement that I could veto the airing or release of footage like that at any point in time. No, he just went and did it, and it aired, and we're all sitting here going, what are you doing? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't your advisor swoop in? Like they did when you were interviewing with Caitlin Collins on CNN, for example.
Your current relationship with the district attorney?
Just as outlined earlier, we are great friends. We speak regularly. The conversation has changed, though, you know, whereas before our conversations were about this case. I'm sure you could imagine and appreciate the amount of time that it takes, that you have to pour into a case a case of this magnitude, trying to prosecute those defendants. But our conversations have shifted to how are you handling the threats that are coming your way? Are you being safe? And democracy, the case will live on, kind of thing.
Just to clarify, when did the romantic relationship between the two of you start?
Yeah, so we get into. There's been this effort to say that, okay, these exact dates are at issue, and these exact dates are. I'm getting signaled here.
Yeah, just shut up. To work on an answer that you haven't had months to work on. Yeah, so literally his advisors swoop in.
Yes. Okay.
They take his clip mic off.
Keep rolling. Don't stop.
So that they can go to the corner and stand facing the cornered bookshelves and work on an answer that they've had months to work on. Or better yet, why is he even doing these interviews? This is what I come back to. Why is he even doing these interviews? Caitlin Collins sitting in the chair, awkwardly waiting for Nathan Wade to finally have a response that makes some sense.
That's good?
Yeah, good. Still rolling.
Okay, we're good. Good. We asked.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
Just to revisit the question, it was to clarify when the romantic relationship started and when it ended.
Sure. So, I believe that the public has, through the testimony and other interviews, the public has a clear snapshot that this is clearly just a distraction.
Filibustering.
It is not a relevant issue in this case, and I think that we should be focusing on more of the facts and the indictment in the case.
Yeah, that would be ideal, except that this happened and you guys didn't have the answers when you were brought before the judge and sworn to give testimony. And the answer is actually a pretty simple one, and I don't understand why this wasn't worked out before you even went on the witness stand. Does anybody really know when a relationship actually starts? It's not like we have a calendar date and we circle that date. When we went on a first date or in a workplace romance, it doesn't just, it's kind of organic. It just kind of evolves over time. That's the answer you give. I don't really have an exact date. It just kind of organically grew over time. We developed feelings for each other. I can't pinpoint an exact date when we said, well, this was the first time we ... But in not having the common sense to stop it before it became anything, Nathan Wade and also Fonnie Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, forego their right to say, well, we should just be talking about the case. Well, first of all, why are you even on CNN? Nobody's enforcing you to go to Comedy Central or CNN to speak about this. You're being invited, but nobody's forcing you to do that. Caitlin Collins with her follow-up.
Well, I ask because obviously it's still a pending matter. It's going to be before the Court of Appeals.
Exactly.
And you talked about how proud you were of all the work that you did in this office. And I think the question that people have when they hear from the Court of Appeals, this isn't happening until next spring, is did the relationship jeopardize that work that you did in this investigation?
Exactly. And therein lies the issue. Why we wouldn't touch upon the work of the Court of Appeals or some higher court, because it's a pending issue before them. I think that we should allow them, take a step back and allow them to take the evidence that they have and do their work, make the decision.
Right.
He's not on the case anymore, so why is he even doing interviews to talk about the case if that's not what anybody wants to hear from him about? He's not on the case anymore, so he really shouldn't even be discussing the case as it is. This is where you have to say, Nathan Wade, shut the up. Stop doing these interviews. We'll get some more reaction from around Metro Atlanta and from legal observers about Nathan Wade going off at the mouth and doing the Comedy Central one is the one that just kind of really just grates on my nerves the most. Don't get me wrong. Doing CNN, doing MSN, doing any of these interviews at this point in time from his not position of not authority in this case is problematic. The Daily Show one, though, just really takes the cake. Anyway, we'll get some reaction and discuss further when The Ron Show returns in just a few here on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Ron Roberts, host of The Ron Show here. A J school drop. I can't even say I'm a J school dropout because I didn't get to J school, but I knew enough about journalism to know that citing your sources is important and probably keeps you out of court. So I do that. Show notes always at ronshowatl.com. Shannon McCaffrey, Bill Rankin in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting on Nathan Wade's appearance on The Daily Show, for example, that this isn't sitting well with Fani Willis's allies. Mayor Shirley Franklin chiming in. I think it's a necessary distraction and disrespectful to both the process and the DA for Mr. Wade to be giving interviews at this time. Georgia State University law professor, good follow on Twitter X, by the way, Anthony Michael Christ speculated that Wade might be seeking a TV contract. You think? And how can that be a positive thing for the Fulton DA's office? I think it would be a constant worry that some internal deliberations might get slipped on national television. He posted that on the X platform. And he's showing up to do work on CNN to do interviews on CNN or the Daily Show comedy. This is just the latest wave, as Shannon McCaffrey and Bill Rankin point out in their article. When news of the Wade-Willis relationship broke early this year, it sidelined Fulton County's election interference case against Trump and his 14 remaining co-defendants for 2 months. Just days after that, Wade was set to break his silence with an interview on NBC's Meet the Press. NBC was already promoting the exclusive interview when Wade abruptly canceled, citing a family emergency. But in early May, he sat down for an interview with ABC News where he said workplace romances are as American as apple pie. And then he was on MSNBC discussing, among other things, the threats he's received while working on the Trump case. They offer some more commentary from some local folks, including former DeKalb County District Attorney J. Tom Morgan, saying the interviews are legally dicey. Prosecutors are limited in what they can say about an ongoing case before the trial, in part because they don't want to do anything that could prejudice a jury. Wade's exit doesn't mean that goes away, according to Morgan. Just because he isn't part of the case anymore doesn't mean that rules of professional conduct don't apply. It's a sideshow, but the sideshow is the show. And the one thing I keep coming back to is, what does Fani think about all this? This does not seem to be working to help her in any way, shape, form, or fashion, although in any interview Nathan Wade does, he says that they're fine, they're still good friends. The speculation continues in this AJC article. There's a public relations problem. Wade's appearance at 2 high-profile Willis events have attracted attention at a time the DA is looking to move on from questions about her personal life. Democratic political strategist Rick Dent said Wade may be aiming to rehabilitate his reputation. Well, you think? But the most important thing is the case, Dent said. This is distracting from the case. He needs to go away and not do any more interviews ever. AJC opinion writer Bill Torpy chiming in today. Whatever the point of the mission that Nathan Wade is on, known only to Wade, the former beau of District Attorney Fani Willis and one-time special prosecutor in Fulton County's criminal case against Donald Trump, Wade is taking what one might describe as an I'm lost for words here. What's the opposite of victory tour, Torpy writes. A raucously funny, or embarrassing, it depends on how you look at it, comedy bit this week involving Wade has people shaking their heads in wonder or disgust. Again, it depends on your outlook. Further down in Torpy's piece, he continues, throughout the interview, Wade played a straight man, sometimes fighting back laughter. Yes, it's awkward to watch. And by the way, I'll have that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com because, again, I cite my sources. But then again, an important criminal case hangs in the balance, Torpy opines. Exactly. Torpy again mentions what former Mayor Shirley Franklin, a friend of Fani Willis, said, about it being an unnecessary distraction. But then he called Shirley Franklin again, post-Quan interview, to ask if she had any further response. And she laughed, adding, quote, "No, what is there to say about it? Sheesh. Is there anything printable to say?" Torpy makes a valid point here. Fani Willis has complained about being attacked and over-sexualized for being a black woman doing her job. She has taken hits and lewd comments. Rudy Giuliani referred to her as a hoe. She's been called monkey and the N-word. And Trump told a crowd it's spelled Fani, like your ass. To which Torpy quips, but Wade was on her side. And then adds, Buddy Parker, a former federal prosecutor and lawyer for a Trump co-defendant, told Torpy, "In my 49 years of practicing law, I've never seen anything like this. I'm not a therapist, but this is some sort of ego trip." Torpy having the same thought I did, actually. One could assume Wade had to know The Daily Show would play up As Borat would say, the sexy times. I don't know if he knew, said Senator Esther Panich when asked for her opinion. But if he didn't know, that might be worse. Torpy finishes either way. Yikes. Exactly.
Archived audio, blogs, social media links, and more, all in one place. Log on at RonShowATL.com. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
And gird your loins, depending on when you're listening to this. If you're listening while this airs 9 to 10 a.m. on the America One Radio app at AmericaOneRadio.com, then I'm telling you, the Supreme Court's going to be coming down with some decisions today. Not sure if it'll be today or in the coming days that we get answers on abortion cases or presidential immunity, for example, but gird your loins because that storm is a-coming. Speaking of storms, I wanted to point out, obviously, we're turning on the news every night, and we've got tropical storms, we've got extreme flooding in Florida, we've got wildfires running amok, and, of course, extreme heat. I mean, don't get me wrong. In Georgia, you get heat. In Portland, Maine, do you get historic heat? Like heat indices in the hundreds? It's deeply concerning, right? So I noticed in Apple News this morning that this story came up, and I was, encouraged, a little encouraged. I mean, with all the bad news and all the slow action or inaction or pushback to action from the right to address climate change, that we get these little nuggets of stories every once in a while that tell us, you know what, maybe we're turning a corner. Hawaii, the state of Hawaii has agreed to what is called a groundbreaking settlement in a youth climate change case. Let me read to you this from Nate Raymond on Apple News. Hawaii on Thursday agreed to take action to decarbonize its transportation system by 2045. Y'all, that is 21 years. That is, as a 50-year-old, I can tell you, it's a blink of an eye. It'll go fast. Anyway, Hawaii has agreed to take action to decarbonize its transportation system by 2045 to settle a lawsuit by 13 young people alleging the U.S. state was violating their rights under the Constitution with infrastructure that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. Can we get a class action suit here in the state of Georgia? Where are these young people? Democratic Governor Josh Green announced the groundbreaking settlement at a news conference attended by some of the activists and lawyers involved in the lawsuit, which they called the first ever youth-led climate case seeking zero emission in transportation. This is encouraging stuff. They argued that the state had prioritized infrastructure projects, such as highway construction and expansion, that lock in the use of fossil fuels rather than focusing on projects that cut carbon emissions. Now listen. This case didn't go to court. The state of Hawaii, which is majority Democrat, saw the case and realized that they have a valid one. And so they didn't let it go to court. They decided to do something about the complaints and what we all see happening every day we turn on the news and realizing, yeah, you know what? We do have a role to play in this, and we are in a position to do something about this. So, I don't know, maybe we should. We're addressing the impacts of climate change today, and needless to say, this is a priority because we know now that climate change is here, Governor Green said. It's not something that we're considering in an abstract way in the future. The Apple News article continues, the case had been set for trial on Monday. It would have been the second ever trial in the United States of a lawsuit by young people who claim their futures and health are jeopardized by climate change and that a state's actions violated their rights. I believe it was Montana, wasn't it? I think it was the first Montana. As part of the settlement, Hawaii will develop a roadmap to achieve zero emissions for its ground, sea, and inter-island air transportation systems by 2045, the year by which the state was already aiming to become carbon neutral. The agreement, which can be enforced in court, calls for the creation of a volunteer youth council to advise the state's Department of Transportation, which committed to reworking its planning to prioritize reducing greenhouse gases and creating a new unit dedicated to decarbonization. The department also plans to dedicate at least $40 million, a drop in the bucket, in expanding the public electric vehicle charging network by 2030 and accelerate improvements to the state's pedestrian, bicycle, and public transit networks. There isn't much by the way of public transit on Oahu. I know that. Lana Alea Lay, a lawyer for the youth activists at Earth Justice, said, quote, "The agreement gives Hawaii a boost in our race against climate disaster and offers a model of best practices that other jurisdictions can also implement." The case is one of several by young environmental activists in the United States, the article cites, that broadly accuse governments of exacerbating climate change through policies that encourage or allow the extraction and burning of fossil fuels. The young people, also represented by the nonprofit law firm Our Children's Trust, claim the policies violate their rights under U.S. or state constitutions. The cases have raised novel legal claims and have been dismissed by several courts, but the young activists scored a major victory last year when the first such case went to trial, I was right, in Montana. In that case, a Montana judge concluded that the Republican-led state's policies prohibiting regulators from considering the impact on climate change when approving fossil fuel projects violate the rights of young people. The lawsuit against Hawaii was filed in 2022 and alleged the State Department of Transportation was operating a transportation system that ran afoul of state constitutional mandates and impaired their right to a life-sustaining climate. The plaintiffs, ages 9 to 18 when the case was filed, argued that the state was violating a right guaranteed by the Hawaii Constitution to a clean and healthful environment and its constitutional duty to, quote, conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and all natural resources. That's a valid, we're always talking about how much we spend on defense. That's always a political football. Well, how much, what's the Pentagon budget? And where's the Pentagon audit? I mean, a lot of that on the left and a lot of that on the right. Why aren't we spending more? Every time a Democrat's in power, Republicans like to rail on, how weak our military is, right? And then when they're swept into office, it's just magically fixed. It's magically cured. It doesn't become a problem anymore. Not a priority, not a discussion. Remember I told you, was it last week or a week or two ago, the Heritage Foundation came out with their grades for how powerful our military is based on the branch and the type of service each branch offers. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all about accountability for expenditures, no doubt about it. But we spend so much money, is my point. We spend so much money to defend our country, not just our people and our ideology, but our country, our physical land, right? We want to erect this border at the southern border because we want to protect, air quotes, I would say, our physical land from, quote, invasion. We spend all this money to protect our land, and we don't do a damn thing to actually protect our land from ourselves. The state, back to the article, the state spent $3 million fighting the case and seeking its dismissal, arguing the zero emissions target and other state laws adopted by the state legislature promoting reduced carbon emissions were, quote, aspirational and could not form the basis of claiming the state was violating the young people's rights. But Judge Jeffrey Crabtree in Honolulu rejected that argument in April of 2023, saying the laws required timely planning and action to address climate change and that the state's inactions had already harmed plaintiffs. In Hawaii, they're at least trying. In Georgia, they're not. This quote, transportation emissions are increasing and will increase at the rate we are going, Crabtree said. In other words, the alleged harms are not hypothetical or only in the future. They are current, ongoing, and getting worse. We need this kind of litigation in Georgia. We do. I mean, the solution in Georgia to transportation needs is always first and please fast. We'll add another lane. Where was I driving the other day? I went to show a house in Canton. Was it Canton? Yeah, it was Canton. No, it was Ackworth. Sorry, Ackworth. And I got off the interstate onto a wide 4-lane. And listen, I'm sure maybe in rush hour traffic it's needed. This wide open 4-lane road with no development around it, leading into a right turn that I took on another wide 4-lane road that just cut through hills. And I remember used to driving a pretty little windy 2-lane road. Well, now it's 4 lanes. And I get it, sprawl. That's the point, Our development inhibits fighting climate change. I get it, give the people what they want. They want their big patio homes and big tracts of land and the subdivisions with cul-de-sacs, which are, again, bad for flow of traffic, so that we can spill them onto these wide 4-lane roads out in the middle of nowhere. Adding another lane to the interstate, or if we can't do that, how about the express lanes for those that can afford to pay a little bit extra? we don't mind spending money, and we don't question when the money, the expenditure goes over budget. We don't question that sort of thing. But when we talk about mass transit and the costs, people absolutely lose their shit. When we talk about just growing in the city, our transportation network, a transportation network in a city that used to have it, by the way, in spades. We had a lot of mass transit in Atlanta once upon a time. And then, of course, suburbanization, white flight, whatever you want to call it, came, and we just didn't see the need to keep spending money suddenly on mass transit. In fact, I'm going to read to you a letter to the editor that was like 100 years ago that spoke to this. Let me give you the background on where I found this op-ed, or this letter to the editor. Zachary Adriansons in the group Beltline Rail Now shared this back on June 11th. While doing research on something else, I stumbled across the attached op-ed written by the original owner of my home in 1922. At the time, Miss Minnie Chase worked as a laundress downtown and used the article to decry a recent proposal by the city to allow cars to utilize the existing streetcar lanes downtown. That's right, we had them. Thereby slowing streetcar traffic in favor of single-occupancy vehicles. As much as Atlanta likes to position itself as a city of the future, it has been making the same policy decisions for the past 100 years. While we're busy fixing our 100-year-old water system, maybe we can update our city's century-old views on streetcar infrastructure as well. Here is that op-ed. Editor of the Journal, will you kindly permit me space in your paper to express myself in regard to the traffic regulations and especially as to the attitude that some people take in regard to the Georgia Railway and Power Company? I know it will be like waving a red flag in the face of some people, including Mayor Key, to say what I intend to, and if I were a person of importance, I might jeopardize my future by speaking out. But being just an insignificant working woman who rides the streetcars instead of an automobile, I guess I'm safe in saying what I think. All right, Minnie. In drawing up the new traffic regulations, the committee in charge has shown some consideration for the people who ride the streetcars. I wonder if Mayor Key or any of the retail merchants ever ride on Peachtree, Whitehall, or Broad Streets during the rush hours. This is 1922, by the way. If they do, no doubt, they cuss the power company all the way along. What with automobiles cutting in front and others running along the track, is it any wonder that they find it almost impossible to keep a schedule? I hold no brief for the company. It is a corporation, and like all other corporations, as well as business firms and some individuals, it's going to take all it can get. But when its interests and the interests of the general public lie along the same lines, why not be fair and at least give it credit for trying to give service, as I know it does? Mr. Rothberg says, and I'm quoting from the Journal, it looks to us that the power company is trying to obtain a private right-of-way through Peachtree and Whitehall streets. Why shouldn't it have a right-of-way on its own tracks? The cars never get off the track and cut in front of somebody's automobile. They attend strictly to their own business of trying to make time under difficulties and carry the hundreds of people who ride them to and from their work. The more the traffic regulations favor the power company, the more they favor the working people. The power company, by the way, ran the tracks at the time and the rail. Back to that. The more the traffic regulations favor the power company, the more they favor the working people. And the city is made up largely of that class. You go, Miss Minnie. The Merchants Committee said they saw, in defeat of the 1-hour parking law, quote, the domineering hand of the Georgia Railway and Power Company. I can see it in the establishment of that law, the domineering hand of the retail merchants, she writes. It is poor policy for the pot to call the kettle black. And if the power company is selfish in wanting a non-parking law, the public at least will benefit by their selfishness. To quote again, the committee says, quote, non-parking laws will not facilitate the movement of traffic, but it will prove harmful to the interests of the retail merchants and the general public. And Mayor Key says that he will act for the, quote, general public, meaning, I presume, the 813 women who signed the petition. Who is selfish now? Minnie Chase writes, if the power company wants a private right-of-way on Peachtree and Whitehall streets, it looks to me as though the retail merchants want the streets converted into a garage for their special benefit. Minnie Chase writing that at 36 Everhart. Well, I don't need to go giving her address and Zach's address as well. But suffice to say, it was 102 years ago that the city of Atlanta, with its pretty vast at the time streetcar network, was starting to have discussions about who deserved priority. The hundreds of people using mass transit or the individuals using automobiles. And, of course, their need for parking. We just tore down, by the way, here in Atlanta, the former Coca-Cola Museum, the old Coke experience or whatever downtown, which was an awkward-looking collection of buildings, don't get me wrong, but we tore them down so that downtown could have parking lots. You can't make this up. I'll include Miss Minnie's article, by the way, in the show notes. You'll get that today at ronshowatl.com. All right, one more segment. Let me catch my breath, get another coffee, and come on back. This is The Ron Show on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Okay, final few minutes of the Friday and weekend Ron Show, which, by the way, you can hear on demand anytime at ProgressiveVoices.com. Also, over the weekend, we do a weekend edition. You can hear that on Progressive Voices via the TuneIn app. What was I going to talk about here? Oh, yeah. We're starting to see, I think, the post-conviction bounce. I mean, maybe not, but maybe. We're starting to see these raw numbers. Lakeisha Jane at splitticket.org writes a little bit about the post-conviction bounce, and we're starting to see a swing in numbers in the presidential election. She writing, I'll admit that I didn't think the Trump conviction would change much regarding the national picture. In some sense, I think I bought into the, quote, nothing ever happens camp's worldview more than I'd care to admit. But I was wrong. There has been a small but clear shift towards Biden since the conviction. This has made the polling picture far closer than it was pre-conviction. 538's averages do a good job of illustrating this. They're quite sticky, meaning that they don't bounce around nearly as much as other polling averages do. Additionally, they do adjust state averages for national movement, meaning that they can better control for a paucity of polling in states like Nevada. The data suggests that the picture has shifted by approximately 2 points towards Biden since Trump's conviction. That lines up with voter recontact surveys done by Echelon Insight and the New York Times Siena College, when voters previously surveyed were asked about their current vote choice immediately post-conviction. Both surveys found a 2-point shift towards Biden. Echelon went from a tie at 47-47 to a Biden 2-point lead, while the Times went from a Trump 3-point lead to a Trump 1-point margin. And she, by the way, shows the post-convention picture in a graph that showed the 538's averages. The polling average on the date of conviction prior to the announcement coming out, showing that on average, Trump showed a 1.7-point margin of victory. He was up 1.1 in Michigan, up 1.8 in Wisconsin, up 2.5 in Pennsylvania, 4.9 in Arizona, 6.2 in Nevada, 5.9 in Georgia, and 6.7 percentage points in North Carolina. I always thought North Carolina was on the cusp of becoming a swing state. And gerrymandering is... I have this theory about gerrymandering and creating the illusion of a party in control and actually willing it to be the case. Anyway, the polling averages 3 weeks after conviction showed that on average, Trump went from up 1.7 to trailing by 0.1 of a percentage point. Up in Michigan by 1.1 to now trailing by 0.5 point. Up in Wisconsin by 1.8 to trailing by 0.5 point. The Pennsylvania gap went from 2.5 to 0.2. the gap in Arizona from 4.9 to 2.6 and within the margin of error. Nevada from 6.2 percentage points for Trump to now 2.9. Georgia, 5.9, not as big a shift, but still a 1.2 percentage point swing in Biden's favor. North Carolina, it was moved by 1.1 percentage points from a 6.7 point margin to a 5.6 percentage point margin. And I happen to think that that's maybe a little early, and I was a little bit in the same camp as the author of this article, which, by the way, again, we'll include it in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. I expected there not to be much of a shift, but a 2 percentage point shift in less than 3 weeks. And we haven't even seen, by the way, the sentencing. When that occurs on July 11th, what will the polling show then? We get a lot of bluster from the right. Remember, after he was found guilty, Judge Jeanine and all of the Fox News pundits and Newsmax and your typical right wing rabble rousers on social media were just breathlessly aplomb with indignation and talking about how this was going to just further entrench the MAGA movement. And yeah, probably so. But that doesn't mean that along the margins, obviously on the left, they can't expect any benefit from Trump being convicted and or sentenced on July 11th. And independents are the ones who are moving the needle in such a way. You can't expect the hardcore partisans on either side to really shift, but it's the independents that are saying, yeah, this is a bridge too far. This is a bridge too far. Back to the split ticket article, there remains a lot of time for things to change in either direction, and seeing Trump regain the lead rebound wouldn't be much of a surprise. But for the first time in a while, polling suggests the presidential election would probably be a pure coin flip if it were held today, which is just a damning statement on where we are as a country. Can I just say that? They continue. That's probably not much comfort for Joe Biden, especially given that he still faces critical persuasion and turnout issues with large swaths of his former voters. But it does suggest that they have responded favorably to him, perhaps for the first time in months. Whether that lasts could determine who the next president is. Incidentally, we are now less than a week away from the first debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. There was a coin flip to determine podium position and who got the last word. And Biden won the coin flip. The Biden team won the coin flip and decided, I'll choose the podium. What? Which means the former president, the convicted felon, Donald Trump, will have the last word. This is going to be must-see television, and the fact that mics are going to be turned off once people are, over their time or start yelling over, it's all fascinating stuff. I don't know that I've ever, psychologically recovered from the first debate between these two in 2020, but here we go. Gird your loins, strap in, because we're in for a wild ride as we head into the final 5 months of the 2024 general election. And that is going to do it for today's Ron Show. Again, everything you heard discussed today we'll have in show notes at ronshowatl.com. Next week, we have new DeKalb County CEO-elect Lorraine Cochran Johnson joining the show, and Libertarian Party presidential candidate. Where is he in this debate? Chase Oliver. Back next week. Have a great weekend. See you then.